Welcome, my beautiful viewership, and welcome to another game review, this time of Monster Sanctuary. This was another game recommended to me by Pro Jared, so thanks again, Mr. Jared. What is Monster Sanctuary? Well, it is a creature collecting game combined with a Metroidvania. So it is a Petroidvania, and let me explain. Yes, Pokemon is an obvious frame of reference because in Pokemon, you go around the world capturing creatures to add to your army. In Monster Sanctuary, you go around the world collecting creatures to add to your army. But instead of at Pokemon, where you're just in a top-downish view, Monster Sanctuary is a 2D game with a side view, kind of like you're playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night or Super Metroid. And your traversal abilities are based on whatever creatures that you have in your party. You can only have one creature from your top 6, or your entire, army out at the time. So, for example, if you pick the Spectral Eagle as a starter, this gold creature, then you get short-term flight. If you pick another creature, then you can cut through vines and so on and so forth. Just so you know, don't be concerned about the traversal abilities granted to you by your starter, because there are over 100 other creatures that you can get in the game. Most traversal abilities are not unique. So, for example, the eagle can give you brief flight, but so can other creatures. You can use various creatures as mounts, which is an improvement over most Pokemon games. And some abilities just have multiple ways of executing them. For example, you're in a dark room. How do you solve a dark room? Well, one, you can turn on the lights, or two, you can bring out a creature that gives you infrared vision. Or three, you can light a torch, which turns on the lights in another way. I liked Monster Sanctuary because it was a unique concept. It also helped that it was on sale at a significant discount, kind of like Yakuza 0, which I talked about in a previous video. So, Monster Sanctuary's story is okay. It has some interesting points. Except for some rare moments, it doesn't try to be very special. It's functional, it's there. If you're playing this game, it's because you want to explore the world, capture a bunch of creatures, have them fight, and level them up and experiment with builds and teams. The game makers know why you're here. That's what the emphasis is. That's where the emphasis is, as well as some wonderful music. So, if you're playing this on Steam like I am, the Snowy Peaks theme, not the alternate one, is the best theme in the game to me. There are some other pretty spiffy themes, such as the Mystical Workshop, or the Keeper's Stronghold, or Horizon Beach, or the Magma Chamber, or some other places which would be considered significant spoilers, and I don't want to spoil what little good plot there is in this game. So, let's just talk about positives and negatives. Main positives, it's a unique concept, so instead of, for example, playing Super Metroid, you get the Grapple Beam, you get the Ice Beam, you get normal missiles, super missiles, Morph Ball, etc. In Monster Sanctuary, you have to find creatures in certain areas and do well enough in certain battles for you to get creature eggs, hatch the eggs, and then they join your army, and then you can use their field abilities. So it's an interesting concept, but in practice, I don't like having to grind out fights just to get creatures. Because Monster Sanctuary is a game where, in its essence, you're going around an elaborate magical zoo with your team of magical creatures, killing all the inhabitants, often repeatedly, getting their eggs, raising their young, converting them to your cause, and then uh, and then you just keep going with this cycle of violence. Winning is not enough in this game for you to get the best items. You have to absolutely wreck the creatures, and when I say wreck, I mean you basically have to do for you to get the best results. You basically have to come in levels after you first explore the zone, because all zone creatures are leveled to your creature's highest level, the level of your highest creature when you first enter the zone, and then just absolutely wreck them in basically one turn. So if you like that sort of thing, good. If you don't, this game's going to be a big turnoff to you, unless you use mods to adjust things and make it more pleasant to you. Other positives, I liked how the environments were diverse in terms of aesthetics. So yes, you're going to find your lava level, your ice level, your home base, your grasslands level. But you're also going to find some more exotic places that I don't want to spoil because they're around the end of the game, and they separate the typical grassland, wetland, fireland, snowland, final area from, well, just some more interesting stuff. So let's talk about some negatives that I found. One, this is a game that strongly encourages you to do two polar opposite things. One is to field a consistent team of three creatures, because you can only have three creatures fighting maximum at any time. But only six of them, your top six, will level up or gain experience from any fight. Meaning, you're expected to level a bunch of creatures just in case. So while it's interesting to be able to amass a vast army of tens or hundreds of creatures, you really have to be able to field a team of, let's just say, somewhere between 6 and 20 creatures if you want to be able to do well in all the fights. Unless you're using guides, unless you just get exceptionally lucky with whatever it is that you pick. Let's also say that for negative or for positive, some creatures just seem simply better than others. For example, the best starters are either the spectral eagle or the spectral toad. I prefer the spectral eagle overall because it starts with its better mobility, but the spectral toad is useful for healing your party and for inflicting poison. It's the earth creature as opposed to the air or electrical creature. This also means that the spectral wolf and spectral lion, even though they can be pretty spiffy, are generally inferior to being an eagle or being a toad. There are other creatures in the game which just felt like they're either superior or inferior versions of what you have already. Mind you, there is creature evolution in this game, but evolving creatures is a side grade. It's not necessarily a direct upgrade or downgrade like in Pokemon. So, for example, if you find yeah, one creature in the dungeon which kind of looks like a bush, and people familiar with this game probably know what I'm talking about. Well, you need an item to evolve it to what's basically Cthulhu, and the Cthulhu guy, the Cthulhu creature is basically a better version of the unevolved creature, and this is just one example. So my final party was, for most fights, Spectral Eagle as my starter, as well as Cthulhu and a Crockle Knight. So yeah, Crockle Knight is meant to look like Shovel Knight from the Shovel Knight series. So, yeah, I don't like how this game basically says you're expected to pick your favorites, and then it says, okay, your favorites aren't good enough. Now you're going to have to level a bunch of other creatures. I don't like grinding. I used a mod to make sure that I never had to grind because it gave me infinite. It gave me the ability to just level up my creatures infinitely, so long as uh, they were less than the level cap. Another thing I didn't like about this game is that the level cap is 42, but it felt low. Because by the time I reached level 42 with my team, and I wasn't going out of my way to grind, I was maybe 2/3 of the way through the game in terms of the story, and then after that there were still some places that I wanted to explore in the world. So I felt like having a level cap of about 50 would have been more fair, so this way people could get more skill points, they could get more skills, they could max out more things, they could get more powerful creatures, and so on and so forth. Another thing that I wish I would have done the first time, and I consider this a negative, is enable the advanced game options and turn on Relics of Chaos, because the Relics of Chaos are equipables that just give extra benefits. Sometimes they're entirely negative, sometimes they're negative and positive, sometimes they're entirely positive, but I wish I would have had these options earlier on. Oh yes. Another negative that Another negative was that upgrading equipment just felt, yeah, I didn't like it that much. I'm like, okay, so I'm expected to field an army of all these creatures, which means to keep up, I'm expected to have at least 6 full sets of top tier gear. The game let me have like 1, 2, or 3 sets of top tier gear fairly easily, but getting the remaining ones just took a bunch of grinding, and at some point I just turned on infinite items because I didn't want to have to deal with that. For story reasons, eventually you get access to a vendor who can sell you the components necessary to upgrade your items, but I learned early on that these guys are just holding out on me. I'd rather that they sell me the entire list of upgrade components from the very beginning, and then let me choose. Let me choose what I wanted. Sure, I paid the appropriate in-game currency for it. There you go. Another negative is that the home warper crystal shards, they are finite. They are consumable. I thought it should just be infinite. So let's just make this unmistakably clear for my overall impression of this game. This is a game that I tried out when I was playing Yakuza 0, and this game had me hooked until near the end, when I remember that I should be finishing Yakuza 0 so that I can do this review and also have the closure of finishing this game. Monster Sanctuary is a game that, unlike Yakuza 0, after I finished it, I wanted to go back and try it again on randomizer, and then because this game has an in-game randomizer, I tried it, and then I realized, I'm just going to be going through the entire game again for uh, uh, for all the appropriate areas, just basically doing the same stuff over, but with a different starting team. And I'm like, But it was worth it just to be able to hear more of the Snowy Peaks theme, because that's my favorite song in the game. So, Monster Sanctuary. Even at full price of $19.99 USD, whatever it is in your local currency, I recommend it. If you can get it on a discount, like with the Steam Christmas sale, I recommend it even more. So, thank you everyone. Good night. God bless.